Hey there, it's Dr. Sarah. Today on the She Found Motherhood podcast, I talk with Robyn from Daenerys Mom Strong. Robyn offers virtual pregnancy and postpartum exercise programs and has offered our listeners 25% off. Simply send her a message on Instagram and let her know you heard about her on our podcast. We'll get into the podcast right after this quick message.
Welcome to the She Found Motherhood podcast. We are Doctors Sarah and Alicia, maternity physicians and moms who have been through it all. We want to empower you with knowledge so you can have the best pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience you can.
She Found Health and She Found Motherhood is meant for general medical information only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. This information does not apply to every situation. If you have questions or if you've received different advice, please contact your healthcare provider. Always seek the advice of your physician or another qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The views expressed by She Found Health and She Found Motherhood and our guests are not representative of any of the institutions with which we are affiliated. Some of our podcast episodes are sponsored so that we can keep getting great info out there to you, our listeners. We only partner with companies that we truly believe in. Some of our links and suggestions may be affiliates, and we would appreciate you using them to help fund this important work. Now let's get to it.
Good afternoon, Robyn. Welcome to the She Found Motherhood podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm super stoked to be here. Robyn, I'll get you to introduce yourself. Robyn is from Daenerys Mom Strong, and we are going to talk about postpartum exercise, right?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about prenatal exercise too if you want, but we can talk
Perfect.
postpartum.
I couldn't remember. Clearly, I'm not that organized. Exercise in the perinatal period.
That sounds great.
Awesome. So do you mind just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about how you got into working with pregnant and postpartum people during focusing on exercise?
Yeah, my name is Robyn. I am a CrossFit Level 2 coach, a pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach, and I'm also a registered massage therapist here in Victoria, BC. So I've always had a passion for working with pregnant women. I've taken a lot of pregnancy and postpartum massage courses. It's just been a little soft spot, but I didn't get into coaching women through the pregnant and postpartum chapter until I was pregnant with my son. And I realized that there wasn't a lot of guidance beyond keep doing what you've been doing or don't lift over X number of pounds. And I just felt because I came from being a competitive CrossFit athlete and went immediately into my pregnancy. So for me, that was very confusing because listening to my body meant ignoring pain. And I didn't think that seemed like the appropriate thing to do during pregnancy. I found this woman, Brianna Battles, who is the founder of the pregnancy and postpartum athleticism movement. She's out of California. I decided to take her class, and then I continued doing that throughout my pregnancy, finished the course early postpartum, and then have been coaching and trying to empower women in this chapter ever since.
Awesome. Very cool. If you had, let's talk pregnancy first. What would your sort of general recommendations be for people who are pregnant in terms of physical activity?
So physical activity in general for most people is recommended. I think 150 hours. I was looking on the
ACON,
site, and
American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Yeah.
that's the one. I was looking on there, and I think they say 150 hours split into a minimum of 3 days with moderate to low intensity exercise. And it's just healthy in general for most pregnant women, obviously, unless you have any contraindications.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it actually, the evidence shows that it helps labor. It can reduce the length of labor and also your recovery. If you think about it, like I always say to people, labor is like a marathon. And then after the marathon, you have to push a baby out. And that's like an intense HIIT or CrossFit workout that
Yeah.
like actually pushing a baby out. So if you're not in shape, if you're not active during your pregnancy, that's freaking hard. It's hard regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So do you have advice around or recommendations around when people always, the caveat is always check with your provider first, but I find people are in generally two camps. One is that they're an active person, so they run or they spin or they go to the gym or they do CrossFit. And my advice is typically continue what you're doing during pregnancy with modifications here and there as needed. And then there's those people that aren't very active. And that's trickier, right? Because you encourage them to get active. What are your sort of favorite things to recommend to pregnant people?
Usually I find out like what their interests are. So what do you enjoy doing? Do you enjoy swimming? Do you enjoy walking? If you're not a more active person, what is it that would make you happy? Yoga, cool, continue doing that. But if you're a runner, if you're in a CrossFit or high intensity interval training, then especially in the beginning, you can continue doing what you love. But then I tell people that at some point we have to take into consideration our core and our pelvic floor. But for the most part, women are capable and that you can keep doing what you're doing. You just have to really listen to what the signs and symptoms are that your body is
Mhm.
telling you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's so important. And sometimes we'll recommend people check in with a pelvic physiotherapy as well, because if they're having like pain, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to stop their activity. They may just need a little bit of support, maybe some treatment, maybe some modification that probably you and some pelvic physios can help support people through.
Yeah, I like to tell women to at least check in once throughout their pregnancy with a pelvic floor physiotherapist
Yeah.
because I don't know what's going on internally. And I feel like I can better support them if I know what
Hmm.
their physio has recommended. So
Hmm.
we're on the same page there.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other thoughts or pearls around exercise in pregnancy that you wanted to share with us?
So I find like most people that continue exercising during pregnancy have decreased low back pain or hip
Hmm.
pain or
Hmm.
even pubic symphysis dysfunction overall at individualized. But I think you just have like more enjoyable pregnancies for the most part. And that's a very generalized statement when you are exercising and staying active.
Totally. And I think the really important message to get across is that there's not one activity you have to do in pregnancy. Like back in my forward day, before I worked a ton and had kids, I used to do a lot of triathlons and I did some longer distance running. I was more into trail running. I did not run in my pregnancies. I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it felt, like my belly. And some people love it, but I just didn't. I walked and I swam and I did yoga and some light weights. And so now that I'm a couple years postpartum from having my third baby, now I'm getting back into running and I'm thinking about getting back into triathlon. But I don't know if you said season or stage or whatever, but this is like and postpartum is a season of your life and you can change what you don't have to. Just because you're a runner doesn't mean you just have to continue running. You could try elliptical, you could try spinning. One, I think that's a really important message to get to people. Like walking is great exercise.
I totally agree. And I think one of the hardest parts for people during pregnancy is the mental side of things. Your body's changing. Things aren't feeling the same as they normally did. Maybe you don't feel good and you can't continue exercising. Or like you said, running doesn't feel good and you feel lost. You have this identity crisis,
Yeah.
the athlete that you were. And I usually try to tell people that it's not forever. It's just for now. This is a temporary stage and you will be able to get back to the things that you love. But here's ways that we can modify to keep you active for where you're at right now.
Totally. And you highlight a really important piece is that pregnancy can be really hard for people, especially people who are active or people who have a history of disordered eating or they have body dysmorphic disorder because there's a lot you're not in control of. And exercise is something that a lot of people do for their mental health. And when you're not able to do the exercise you do or you're not in charge of how your body is changing, that can be really challenging. So exercise and modifying the exercises you do can be really empowering for pregnant people. I wish I had you when I was pregnant. I am. I got married when I was 30 weeks, 32 weeks pregnant with my first. I guess you would call that a shotgun wedding, wouldn't you? Anyways, and so I was like trying to be in shape and I like found these, what is called Pop Sugar Fitness. Do you know Pop Sugar? They have like online videos and stuff. So I was doing like prenatal, you got some weights and stuff. But I think I would have been happier in my pregnancies. I was generally fine in my pregnancies, but my activity level definitely was not what it used to be. And I think that would have been something that would have been really helpful to me at the time. So for anyone who's listening, if you're pregnant, get active, right? Walking, running, swimming, spinning, yoga, you name it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I like to tell people too, pregnant women are not fragile. We're all
Yeah.
invincible, but we're not fragile. You're capable. So you can get out.
Oh, totally. And I did a podcast with Lauren from Core Connections Physio a few weeks ago, and we were talking about that the pelvis is not fragile. It is such a strong structure, and exercise can help improve the strength, right, of your pelvis and of the muscles surrounding it. I think about all that. I've had to do so much rehab because of things I stopped doing in pregnancy. So now getting back to running, like my hamstrings I have to be so careful because my body has changed a lot.
Yeah, so it's adapted and now you're trying to get back into it.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah,
Yes, Alicia.
did you have any problems with newborn sleep?
Oh my gosh, I sure did, especially with my first.
Me too. I wish I'd known more about what to expect going into it.
I know, and I wish that I had known to create a sleep plan with my partner.
I know. How can you support each other to get the sleep that you need while supporting your little baby?
Totally.
So guess what, guys? That's why we created the Newborn Sleep 101 course. In this course, we discuss what does newborn sleep look like and how can we help support that sweet little baby to become the best sleeper they can.
While also supporting you and your partner as you navigate this complex, sleep-deprived time.
We talk about how to set up your nursery or your bedroom to optimize both your sleep and your newborn sleeps. And we also start talking about how you can start implementing routines and schedules into your day and your newborn so that by the time they're 3 or 4 months, it's well established. Because guess what? That's when they start to really need it.
If you're interested in learning more, head to our website, www.shefoundhealth.com/courses.
We hope that you get better sleep than we did.
So that's a good segue into talking about activity and exercise postpartum. How do you typically guide people around that?
So we usually talk about that getting cleared 6 weeks postpartum isn't a green light to get back into what you were doing pre-pregnancy. A lot of people are like, hey, I got cleared by my doctor or my midwife or my physio, and I'm going to get back into running 5K or whatever it may be. But I like to think of it more as a cautionary yellow that we need to proceed with caution with progressive overload. So starting with the basics, starting with rehabbing, and then building from there, adding in one thing at a time. So adding in like learning movements again. Well, how does your squat feel? How does your lunge feel? Can you control that with reps? Okay, good. Can we add a little bit of loads and that either be like resistance or time under tension or weight? And then from there, later on, we can start adding impact. So it is a very slow, progressive approach as opposed to boom, I'm ready for exercise again.
I know. I think a lot of people just want to start like running again immediately. And the more I learn about pelvic health and the importance of, I recommend connecting with the pelvic physio right away and then gradually returning to activity as exactly like you said in the staged approach. And the other thing I really like that you said is the 6 weeks. It's like the same thing people talk about, like having sex postpartum. Like the 6 week visit is not the all clear. It's just when we know your uterus has returned to its pre-pregnant size, you should be done bleeding, your tear should be repaired. But that's the beginning. And I tell people beforehand, listen to your body. If you want to go for a walk around the block, go for a walk around the block, but not to rush it. And I think you said earlier about you'll be able to do the activity you used to do, but to remember that it took you 10 months for your body to change from pre-pregnant to birth. And so to expect to gradually return to your pre-pregnant strength as well. It's not like an instant.
Exactly. And I would say it actually probably takes at least that long, if not double, to get back.
Yeah.
There's so many other factors involved too. What's your sleep? What's your nutrition? And the demands of motherhood. Like you have a baby on you 24 hours a day. You don't have a lot of alone time to recover. And then the hormones that come with it too. There's a lot of factors in there. And I think slowly progressing will allow your body the time to adapt and heal and actually get you back to what you're doing faster than trying to go way too soon.
You mentioned a very important point that we hadn't talked about yet. And postpartum is exhausting, right? Like it's a full-time job looking after a newborn. And so some people might struggle to find a time to fit exercise in. How do you support your clients with that? Getting exercise with a brand new baby that's feeding every 3-4 hours.
So in the beginning, I really just encourage women to walk, take their babies out for walks, like start by doing flat surfaces. If you want to make it more challenging, you can add hills or carry them in a carrier or push them in a stroller. And then in the program, I tell people that they can modify any exercise to baby holding. So if your
Yes.
baby wants to be close to you, like we're going to modify those weighted step ups. You're going to hold your baby instead or whatever it may be. I'm very okay with modifying on the fly to accommodate for what mom and baby.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I did a little bit of postpartum boot camp type stuff after my third with a girlfriend of mine. And we would be doing like push ups with your baby or doing squats, holding your baby and that kind of stuff. Because I remember being on like a spin bike holding my baby because he was getting fussy and I wanted to spin. So I think it's important for people to know that we expect you to have your baby with you, and your workout is not going to be your focused 45-minute intense that it used to be.
It's so true. Yeah, it's different. And it's some people feel comfortable leaving their babies with their partners or having someone watch their baby so they can work out. And that's great too. And they want that individualized time for themselves if they need it for their mental or physical health. But for the most part, I think just encouraging women that like the workout doesn't have to be perfect. We can adapt and modify. And again, like my saying in life is it's not forever, it's just for now. And you will get through it. They won't always want you as much and you'll get back to doing more of what you
Oh,
love
I
and
know.
do.
It's so crazy. I think back to after I had my third, he came everywhere with me because I was so used to like babies by then and carrying them around with me. So he would be like at the kickboxing gym lying on a play mat, or he'd be at like the boot camp I was going to. I had a jog stroller out and about. We would be didn't take him swimming when he was that little, but and it's so true. Like this too shall pass. Because I think some people who are really active, that is hugely the change in how you approach activity is really impactful, especially in terms of your mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can feel like a lot and it can feel like you're never going to get that time to yourself again. So, and I understand how important it is to people. Like I was there too. And that, yeah, you will get through it. It's not going to last forever, but we can adapt when we need to. Sometimes babies will be fine for the 45 minutes laying on a mat. Sometimes you
Mhm,
start your workout and it's nope, not happening. Maybe we'll get after it like another day. And that's the other thing is I tell people in the early stages to prioritize rest and sleep over
mhm,
exercise.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that might be hard to hear for some people, but if you're not rested, you're not going to be able to put out the energy you need and then have more energy to continue to care for your.
Exactly. It's a little bit of a vicious cycle there.
Yeah, totally. Any other thoughts around postpartum exercise that we haven't talked about?
Yeah. So a couple things that we haven't addressed yet is just women often are concerned about if they have a diastasis, which is the separation of your abdomen or your abdominal muscles or pelvic organ prolapse or urinary incontinence. Just those are big, scary things. And I know that everyone's worried about their diastasis or their possible diastasis. And usually at around 6 to 8 weeks, most people have come back together and are partially healed. And again, we just don't go into doing too much high intense abdominal exercise, but
Mhm,
slowly progress. Like, how does doing a plank off an incline feel? And then does that feel good? Cool. Can we do it off of keys and then off of your toes and slowly progressing that way and modifying on an individual basis? So everyone's going to be different, of course. So it's hard to give generalized advice for
totally.
one thing that'll help someone's diastasis might not help someone else's kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think just being aware that there's no, like, blanket one size fits all, and there's no ban against exercises either, certain exercises, it's like that individualized, talk to your trainer, talk to your physio, and figure out what's gonna work for you and your body.
Yeah, you can tell people like, okay, it's having sort of symptoms. Like, what's the strategy right now? What are you doing when you do that exercise? Can we change the way you're breathing? Can we change your position and posture? Can we change like the weight? Or you do have too much load for where you're at? And if not, can we change the range of motion? And if that's still too much, maybe we modify to a different exercise or get you looked at further by someone else. If I can't troubleshoot it, I often refer out.
No, exactly, that's so important, and we've had a couple podcasts around, like, diastasis. People are so concerned about diastasis. We've got there's lots of information about that out there. And I think if you're concerned, ask for help. Don't just wonder. Yeah, it's people are very well versed these days with diastasis and how to support people with that.
I agree, and especially because the width of the diastasis isn't as important as can you generate tension. Is it strong under there? Because you might still be very functional even with a diastasis and can do a lot of abdominal exercises without any implications. Another reason to get assessed is just to see what's your tissue like.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. We did a podcast with Krista Wark from Care and Physiotherapy, and she talked a lot about that. And I'm just like learning so much because this is not I'm really great at the medical stuff and pregnancy, but like the MSK diastasis side is not my expertise. So lots of people out there to help you if you've got one or if you're worried you have one. And anything else that you think we should talk about that we haven't in terms of postpartum exercise?
Well, my other thought process is healing isn't linear.
Yeah.
So what that means is that a lot of people will feel good one day or feel good for a while and then regress and have symptoms, and that kind of ebbs and flows like that too. So if you're feeling really good and then all of a sudden you don't, take a look at what other stresses are going on your life, what's your sleep, what's your recovery like, nutrition, and other factors in your life that might be contributing to having some symptoms. And then you can dial it back and then hopefully it'll go back
Yeah.
down again. But
Yeah. It's a really good point. Even things like when people have bleeding postpartum, same thing. It's not linear. It doesn't just taper off. It's like the more active days you are, you might have a little bit of heavier bleeding. And I think that's a really important lesson for us to remember for everything postpartum. It's gonna there will be ups and there will be downs. Yeah, go with the flow for sure. So, what kind of support for people, for anyone who's listening that is local to Victoria, what kind of support and resources and programs do you offer?
so I do offer a class twice a week at Toronto Athletics, which is in a Esquimalt. It's at 9 a.m. and moms can bring babies. And I offer, and that you can also be pregnant and come to that class, but less pregnant people come more just due to working hours than
Mhm.
postpartum. And yeah, so babies are welcome to come. So it's a good place for, I call it a mom's group with a little bit of exercise.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I coach remotely. So I do online remote programming for people that don't feel comfortable coming to classes. And I do have a 6-week return to exercise program that is usually geared to be started around the six week mark or so. And it starts with basic core connection breathing and then core work and progressing to harder stuff throughout the program. And that is 3 workouts a week, but you can do it on your own time. So it's completely self-paced, but there's coach support. So I won't tell you when you need to work out. You can choose when you want to work out. But if you have any questions, shoot me a message and just say, hey, Robyn, I have a question about this exercise or this one doesn't feel good. What can I do instead? And then we can go back and forth that way.
Okay, cool. So the virtual coaching that you do, is that available to anyone? Is there any restrictions on that? Could anyone in BC do it? In Canada? Yeah.
Anyone, I actually have a girl from Rhode Island that I'm coaching right now.
Amazing. Very cool.
Yeah, I met her on a course that I did recently, and then she wanted to start working with me, which was really cool. But I have a client in Vancouver, and yeah, most people hear about me and are local, but you definitely don't have to be.
Okay. Okay, cool. And then the same with the course. People could access it from anywhere.
Anywhere, yeah,
Yeah.
anywhere in the
Yeah.
world. Yeah,
And what is how do people find?
I have a website. It is www.robynrayner, so ROBYNRAYNER.ca, and they can see information from my website. And they can also follow me on Instagram, which is at tyrannus.mom.strong, and they can just DM me on that. I'm always happy to return messages
Awesome.
that way.
Okay, I'll link those in the show notes, your website and your Instagram handle. And so people can reach out to you for support or do your online virtual or your course, which is self-paced, which I love because my life is crazy.
Yeah, I do the self-paced for that too, because and the motherhood, you just never know like what
Yeah.
plans are going to happen. So your baby doesn't have a good sleep, you're not required to wake up and come to a class in the morning. You can
Yeah.
do it when it works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when your baby's napping, which could be at a different time every day. Yeah. Awesome. Any parting thoughts or stuff that you wanted to share that we didn't talk about before we say our goodbye?
The biggest thing I like to tell women when returning to exercise postpartum is intention now for intensity later. You can get back to what you're doing, and it is a short-lived period. You doesn't feel that way. And just that if you need any help with exercise advice, like I'm here, they can reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, Robyn.
You're welcome. So thank you so much for having me on the show.
Total pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out our website at www.shefoundhealth.ca and to sign up for our community for weekly bump blasts. Make sure to check us out on Instagram or Facebook at she.found.motherhood and head on over to your favorite podcast app and leave a review and a 5-star rating. If you enjoyed this podcast, take a pic of yourself listening to it and share it on social. Make sure to tag us on it so we know to keep making them.